In the serene chambers of the celestial citadel, where the gentle hum of futuristic technology mingled with the soft glow of bioluminescent flora, the alien sovereign stood in solitude. Her magnificent figure, adorned in flowing, translucent garments of her kind, radiated both command and elegance. Twin moons ascended in unison, casting silvery illumination across the lush hills and crystalline cities of her realm. It was a scene designed to evoke wonder, a testament to her people's mastery over both nature and technology. Yet to the queen, it brought no solace. Her name, unpronounceable by human tongues, was known to her subjects as Telestra. She was revered as the monarch of a formidable race that had conquered interstellar travel millennia before most civilizations in the galaxy had even discovered fire. Her intellect was as sharp as the finest crystalline blades, her decisions swift and exact. Yet, despite her might and the unwavering loyalty she commanded, she found herself troubled by a disquieting yearning, a void that gnawed at her increasingly with each passing cycle. This restlessness had begun during the Galactic Peace Conference held in the neutral zone of Etheris Prime. The event was a grand spectacle, drawing representatives from across the galaxy. In the golden-hued halls of the conference chambers, Telestra had encountered the human diplomat, Ambassador David Foster. At first, he barely registered with her among the diverse crowd, as humans had never been particularly remarkable to her. Fragile, short-lived, and technologically primitive compared to her species. Yet something about David lingered in her thoughts long after the summit concluded. While the other delegates engaged in ostentatious displays of rhetoric, David remained quiet, observing with a focused intensity that piqued her interest. When he finally spoke, his words lacked the arrogance typical of lesser races. Instead, he conveyed a calm wisdom that transcended the immediate disputes being discussed. His thoughts resonated deeply within her, revealing an understanding rooted in compassion and patience. Initially, Telestra dismissed her intrigue as a fleeting curiosity, but now, months later, that curiosity had burgeoned into something more profound and personal. Her thoughts often wandered to humanity, particularly their modes of reproduction and emotional bonds, concepts utterly foreign to her own people. For her race, procreation was a calculated, sterile procedure, meticulously selecting genetic material to ensure the survival of their lineage. Emotions held no place in these decisions. In contrast, humans seemed to weave intimacy and emotion into their acts of creation, forming connections that were baffling yet captivating to her. As she stood on her palace balcony, her gaze drawn to the stars, Telestra permitted herself a rare moment of vulnerability. She wondered what it would be like to perceive the universe through the lens of human emotion, to be driven by passion, to yearn for the touch of another not for survival, but for connection. This thought was both alien and intoxicating. Her mind returned to David. She had extended an invitation for him to visit her world under the pretense of fostering closer diplomatic ties, yet her true motive was to seek understanding. Answers only he could provide regarding the essence of human nature. "My queen," a soft voice interrupted her reverie. Telestra turned to see one of her attendants, a tall figure with iridescent eyes that glimmered faintly in the palace's dim light. "The banquet preparations are complete. The human ambassador will arrive shortly." The grand banquet hall of Telestra's citadel was unlike anything David Foster had ever encountered. It was a marvel of alien artistry and organic engineering, pulsating with life, as if the very walls were part of a vast sentient organism. Arches of translucent material adorned with luminescent veins rose to a high ceiling, rippling like a tranquil sea. The air was imbued with an intoxicating fragrance, a blend of unfamiliar alien flowers and spices that tantalized the senses. David stood near the entrance, absorbing the spectacle. Delegates from various species mingled, their conversations creating a low hum that resonated throughout the hall. Some were familiar faces from his years as a diplomat, while others were new, their forms defying human imagination, shimmering in colors beyond his comprehension. Yet, amid this awe-inspiring atmosphere, it was Telestra who captivated him. She stood at the far end of the hall, illuminated by the twin moons filtering through the crystalline windows. Regal and commanding, her robes flowed around her like liquid stardust, moving as if alive. Her skin glowed softly in the ambient light, and her deep, otherworldly eyes held an ancient wisdom. David felt a profound sense of awe. She was not just a queen, but a figure of immense depth and complexity. He had witnessed her carrying the weight of her species, each decision rippling across the galaxy. Yet beneath her serene exterior, he sensed something else: curiosity, fascination, and a hint of loneliness. The realization that someone so powerful could feel isolated struck him as odd. As if sensing his gaze, Telestra turned slightly, her eyes locking onto his for a brief moment, the banquet fading into the background. Her expression remained inscrutable, yet a subtle shift in her posture felt like an invitation. Taking a deep breath, David maneuvered through the crowd, the other delegates parting respectfully. When he stood before her, he bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that he knew her people appreciated. "Your Majesty," he greeted her, his voice steady. "It is an honor to be in your presence again." Telestra inclined her head in acknowledgement, her gaze unwavering. "Ambassador Foster," she replied, her voice smooth and resonant, tinged with warmth absent in their previous meetings. "The honor is mine. I am glad you accepted my invitation." "It's not an invitation one could easily refuse," David replied with a faint smile. Telestra's eyes softened momentarily, a flicker of amusement gracing her features. "You are kind to say so, but I suspect it is not merely the beauty of my world that has captivated you tonight." David tilted his head, intrigued. "I would be lying if I said I wasn't fascinated by your world, Your Majesty. But you are correct. It is the opportunity to speak with you again that I value most." For a moment, silence enveloped them, not uncomfortable, but charged with a palpable intensity. Telestra seemed to study him, attempting to decipher the intricacies of his thoughts. "Come," she said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Walk with me." Without awaiting a response, she turned and glided through the banquet hall, her robes trailing behind her like a shimmering river. David fell in step beside her as they navigated the throngs of guests, feeling the weight of their curious gazes. It was unusual for the queen to focus her attention on any one individual, yet he disregarded the stares, his focus solely on her. They walked in silence for a time, passing through archways leading to a secluded terrace that opened up to the night sky. The twin moons hung low, casting a silvery glow across the landscape, where the sprawling cities of Telestra's world sparkled like distant stars. David was momentarily at a loss for words, mesmerized by the breathtaking sight. Telestra, however, appeared unfazed by the view. She paused at the edge of the terrace, her gaze fixed intently on him. "I wish to understand your people better, Ambassador Foster," she said, her voice low yet filled with purpose. "You spoke of love and the bonds humans form with one another. It is a concept that intrigues me." David raised an eyebrow, surprised by her directness. "Love is complicated, Your Majesty. It varies for each individual, but it is central to who we are." Telestra nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing as she contemplated his words. "My people do not experience love as yours do. We value logic, precision, and survival. Emotions are seen as inefficiencies. Yet I cannot help but wonder if we are missing something your kind, despite their fragility, has mastered." Leaning against the terrace railing, David looked to the moons above. "Love is many things, but it's not always efficient," he said thoughtfully. "It can be messy, unpredictable, and even painful, but it's also what gives our lives meaning. It's what makes us human." Telestra remained silent for a long moment, her eyes searching his face as if trying to grasp something elusive. "And what of reproduction?" she finally asked, her tone neutral, yet her curiosity unmistakable. "Your species forms emotional bonds. How does that factor into the continuation of your race?" David smiled faintly. It was an unusual question, yet everything about their conversation felt extraordinary. For humans, reproduction is deeply tied to emotion, he explained. It's not just about survival. It's about creating life with someone you care for, someone you love. There's an emotional and physical intimacy to it that's unique to us. Telestra's gaze did not falter as she absorbed his words. I see, she murmured. My people reproduce through a highly advanced biomechanical process. There is no intimacy, no emotional connection. It is efficient but clinical. Is that why you're curious? David asked softly. Because you think your people might be missing out on something? The queen hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty passing across her otherwise composed features. Perhaps, she admitted. But it is not only that. I have ruled for many cycles, Ambassador, and in that time I have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. I have seen the beauty of the stars and the darkness of war. Yet for all my knowledge and power, I find myself wanting. I look at your people and see something I cannot fully grasp, something that transcends logic and reason. David watched her closely, his heart racing. This was more than mere curiosity. It was deeply personal. I think, he said carefully, that what you're feeling is loneliness, Your Majesty. The words lingered between them, heavy and raw. For a long moment, Telestra remained silent, her eyes, usually so steady, faltering slightly as she gazed into the distance. Loneliness, she repeated quietly. Is that what this is? David nodded softly. You've been isolated for so long. The silence stretched between them, an invisible thread connecting their disparate worlds. Telestra turned her gaze to the night sky, the twin moons casting silver shadows over her regal features. Loneliness, she whispered again, as if tasting the word for the first time. I have known isolation, but never in such a personal context. David sensed the vulnerability hidden beneath her majestic exterior. Your role as a leader must be isolating, even among your own people, he ventured, his voice gentle yet probing. You carry the weight of countless lives on your shoulders. It's understandable to feel alone in that. Telestra let out a soft breath, her ethereal form illuminated by the moonlight. Isolation is a necessary burden, she replied, her tone shifting slightly. It is what makes me effective as a ruler. Yet, in my pursuit of the greater good, I have often sacrificed my own happiness. Have you ever considered that perhaps happiness doesn't come from sacrifice but from connection? David asked, his heart pounding as he dared to challenge her perspective. The bonds you form, the experiences you share, those are what make life worth living. Her gaze flicked back to him, eyes glimmering with intrigue. You speak as if connection is a tangible resource, one that can be harnessed and cultivated. In my experience, emotions are chaotic, and attachment brings vulnerability. David smiled gently, leaning slightly closer. Maybe that chaos is what makes it beautiful. We are flawed beings, but those flaws allow us to grow, to learn, and to love. It's through our connections that we discover who we are. For a moment, Telestra simply stared at him, as if trying to decipher a complex puzzle. Then she nodded, though her expression remained contemplative. And what of pain? Love can bring joy, but it also brings suffering. Is that not a risk worth considering? It is, he agreed, the weight of her words resonating within him. But pain is a part of life. Just like love, it shapes us. It teaches us resilience. Without it, joy would lose its significance. The highs and lows are what define our journey. Telestra turned her gaze back to the horizon, where the glimmering cities of her realm sparkled under the twin moons. Your philosophy is intriguing, Ambassador. Yet, I wonder if it is truly applicable in my world, a world where emotional bonds are seen as weaknesses. Maybe it's time to challenge that perspective, David suggested, emboldened by their exchange. You have the power to reshape your people's understanding of emotions. You could show them that vulnerability isn't a flaw, it's a strength. As the words left his lips, a thought sparked in Telestra's mind. Perhaps, she mused, the very fabric of my society is what has kept us isolated from the universe beyond. If we continue to view emotions as inefficiencies, how can we truly evolve? Exactly, David replied, feeling a sense of urgency in their conversation. Humanity has faced challenges, but we've learned from them. We've adapted. If you open your mind to the possibility of emotions, perhaps your people will learn to embrace connection as well. For the first time, a flicker of hope danced in Telestra's eyes. Could it be that simple? She questioned, her voice almost hesitant. To inspire change among a species that has existed for eons, governed by logic and precision? It won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is, David responded earnestly. Change takes time and courage. It starts with you, your majesty. If you believe in the power of connection, then others may follow. They stood side by side, the night air enveloping them in a serene stillness, broken only by the distant hum of alien wildlife and the soft rustle of Telestra's robes. The weight of her isolation hung between them, yet there was an undeniable spark, an uncharted territory waiting to be explored. Ambassador Foster, Telestra said suddenly, her voice steadying with renewed resolve. Will you help me? Will you guide me in understanding these human connections? I have much to learn, and I suspect the experience will be as enlightening for you as it will be for me. Surprised yet exhilarated, David nodded. I would be honored, Your Majesty. Together, we can explore what it means to connect. Telestra smiled, a radiant expression that seemed to illuminate the dark night around them. Then let us begin this journey, not just for us, but for my people as well. Perhaps we can reshape the future of my civilization. As they stood on the terrace, united by a shared purpose, a profound sense of possibility coursed through them. In that moment, beneath the twin moons and a tapestry of stars, they became allies in a venture that transcended their respective worlds. Two beings bound by a singular desire to uncover the depths of connection, love, and ultimately, the very essence of existence. Underscore 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 underscore. As the banquet progressed, Telestra and David resumed their places among the delegates. But now their conversations danced with newfound energy and purpose. With each interaction, David found himself increasingly captivated by Telestra's sharp intellect and her burgeoning understanding of human emotion. She engaged with the other diplomats, her aura radiating a warmth that had previously been absent. Telestra's insights began to resonate within the hall. She initiated discussions on diplomacy that included not just strategy, but empathy. She sought to understand the motivations behind each ambassador's stance, challenging her colleagues to consider the emotional ramifications of their decisions. David watched in awe as she transformed before his eyes, gradually shedding the rigid expectations of her role as a ruler and embracing a new dimension of leadership, one that prioritized connection and understanding. The human ambassadors were taken aback by Telestra's evolving perspective. They observed her interactions with a mixture of respect and admiration, recognizing her willingness to explore uncharted territory. For the first time, they saw a leader not only commanding respect, but genuinely striving for unity among their diverse races. In the days that followed, David and Telestra embarked on their mission to understand one another more deeply. They began by sharing their cultures, David introducing her to human art, music, and literature, while Telestra offered glimpses into the grandeur of her civilization's history, its struggles and triumphs. One evening, seated beneath a canopy of luminescent flowers that filled the air with intoxicating fragrances, David played a simple melody on a handheld instrument he had brought along. Telestra listened, captivated by the emotions that resonated within the notes. Music is a language of its own, he explained, his fingers dancing over the strings. It can evoke emotions that words sometimes cannot. Telestra tilted her head, absorbing his every word. It is beautiful, she said softly. It conveys a depth of feeling that I have yet to understand. David smiled, pausing for a moment. Would you like to try? With a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, Telestra took the instrument. Her fingers hesitated at first, but as she began to strum the strings, a strange melody emerged, one that felt both alien and familiar. It was unlike anything David had ever heard, resonating with a raw, primal energy that spoke to his very core. As they shared this moment, an unspoken bond deepened between them. Telestra's music was a reflection of her journey, a harmonious blend of her past and the vulnerability she was beginning to embrace. In that melody, David sensed her struggles, her hopes, and her longing for connection. "See," he said gently when she finished, "you've created something beautiful." Her eyes sparkled with newfound understanding. "I feel liberated," she admitted, a shy smile gracing her lips. "I have never expressed myself in such a way before." David's heart swelled with joy. "That's the power of connection, Your Majesty. It opens new avenues of expression." Over the weeks, they continued to explore the boundaries of their understanding, pushing one another to confront fears and embrace vulnerabilities. Telestra introduced David to the intricacies of her world, unveiling the magnificence of her cities, the grandeur of her people's architecture, and the wonders of their technology. In return, David shared the fragility and resilience of humanity, the beauty of their imperfections, and the strength derived from facing adversity. Each encounter brought them closer, their discussions evolving into candid conversations about their hopes, dreams, and the weight of their responsibilities. In those moments of honesty, Telestra's guarded demeanor began to crack, revealing glimpses of the warmth and compassion that lay beneath. One evening, as they strolled through a garden illuminated by bioluminescent blooms, Telestra turned to David, her expression contemplative. "I never understood what it meant to be vulnerable," she confessed. "Yet, through our time together, I feel as if I am beginning to grasp its significance. It is not a weakness, but rather a pathway to strength." David stopped, facing her fully. "Exactly. Vulnerability can be terrifying, but it's also where true connection begins. It's the first step toward understanding oneself and others." Telestra's gaze softened, and for a moment, the air between them felt charged with unspoken emotions. "You have changed me, Ambassador," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You have opened my eyes to possibilities I never dared to consider." "Your Majesty, you are the one who has embraced this change," David replied earnestly. "You possess the strength to lead your people into a new era." In that fleeting moment, as the stars shimmered overhead, David sensed a shift in their relationship, an unspoken understanding blossoming between them. He felt an undeniable connection that transcended their roles as ambassador and queen, a bond forged through shared experiences and an exploration of their deepest selves. As they resumed their walk through the garden, David felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they were not only challenging their own beliefs, but also forging a path toward a brighter future for Telestra's people, one that celebrated the beauty of connection, emotion, and understanding. And as the twin moons hung high in the sky, David knew they were on the brink of something profound, a journey that would not only change their worlds, but perhaps unite them in ways they had yet to fully comprehend.